Hi there. In my Facebook exchanges, conversations, I've been wrestling with a guy who is a staunch evolutionist, and he's very good at expounding his own case. And I thought I would make a video here just to talk about evolution. It's been a while since we've talked about that, and what I want to show is why I just can't embrace evolution. Not so much even about Scripture, Genesis, and how they are not compatible at all, of course. But here's what I want to talk about. By the way, I do believe that in Genesis, and I think that's the real skinny about how we got here and how life began and how life diversified throughout the ages. But here's what I want to talk about. Everyone, and I say almost everyone, including Richard Dawkins, the great atheist and biologist. I think he's probably retired now. But anyway, I read his book a couple of times, The God Delusion. He agrees, and most thinking people agree, that the universe looks designed. That is to say that everything looks like it has a purpose. My eyes are not just randomly there. They're for the purpose of seeing. My heart is for pumping blood. My blood is for getting the oxygen to the places it needs to go, and so forth. Everything seems to have a purpose, and so it looks like it's designed. When the mathematicians got involved several years ago about this argument, is it by chance, everything happened by chance, randomly, or is it designed with a purpose? Of course, then you have to have a designer, if that's the case. It might be helpful to get a few numbers in mind here. The estimated number of seconds, and I'm using Big Bang cosmology here. I understand that, and there's other issues about the age of the universe and so forth, but I'm going to use theirs. The estimated number of seconds since the Big Bang, which would be, I think most people now say 13.5 billion years. So the estimated number of seconds since then is 10 to the 18th. Am I right about that? Yes, 10 to the 18th power. That means 10 with 18 zeros after it. That's just the number of seconds in 13.5 billion years. The number of stars is estimated at 10 to the 22nd power, 10 with 22 zeros. Now those numbers are becoming astronomical, of course. The chances of shuffling a deck of cards and then randomly laying them out in order with all the 1, 2, 3, ace, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through king, in all four suits, the chances of doing that at random is one chance in 10 to the 68th power, which is kind of interesting. It's more of a chance to do that than there are the number of stars. Well, now we're getting close to the number of atoms in the universe. It's estimated by scientists that the number of atoms in the universe, I can't even imagine that number, much less what we're talking about here. But anyway, it's 10 to the 80th power. The number of atoms, now you could say quarks are smaller than that. Okay, I get that. But the number of atoms in the universe is estimated to be 10 with 80 zeros after that. Well, when the chances of something happening goes beyond these virtually incomprehensible numbers, it may be theoretically possible for that 1 in 10 to the 80th power thing to happen, but it's not considered actually possible. What then are the chances of blind, mindless, natural forces randomly producing life from non-living matter? Now, some would say it doesn't matter what are the chances against it. We know it happened. No, we don't know that it happened. We speculate. So the atheistic scientists speculate that life had to happen that way. It came from chemicals bonding. But the chances of that happening by random, blind, natural forces, and they're doing the math, not me. not Christians doing this. This mathematicians, statisticians doing this. The chances of that happening are 1 chance in 10, not to the 80th power, to the 40,000th power. That means 10 with 40,000 zeros after it. Now, if you think that's probable, or that must have happened that way, because after all, we can't invoke creation here, it's much more likely, even naturally, it's much more likely for a virgin to conceive a child than it is for life to happen randomly. Now, Richard Dawkins' argument against intelligent design, his book, The God Delusion, I've read it a few times. In his argument against intelligent design, he builds it up, but here's his argument against it. You can't invoke intelligent design for these things. You must then embrace chance, no matter how outlandish that chance is. And here's his argument. Who designed the designer? You can't invoke a designer because it's just like saying, well, if God made everything, who made God? My kids asked that question when they were young. And the simple answer is no one made God. By definition, and I'm convinced of this philosophically, you have to have an eternal first cause for everything else. Otherwise, you are plagued by an infinite regress of time and events and so forth. That's impossible. So what's the real problem then with saying, no, there has to be an intelligent designer that is undesigned himself. If you're the first cause, then you aren't caused by something else. You can't say, if God made everything, then who made God? Because by definition, God is uncreated, uncaused, and therefore must be eternal. Okay, there are 2 guys, neither of them are Christians, that I just want to kind of conclude with this here. A guy named Thomas Nagel. Thomas Nagel is an atheist and one of the longest living philosophers alive today. I'm thinking he still is. I don't know that for sure. Anyway, his last book is called Mind and Cosmos. And I would encourage you, if you're just wanting to read a non-Christian book here that kind of makes a pretty good case. The book is called Mind and Cosmos, and now I want you to listen to the subtitle. It's this: Why the Materialist Neo-Darwinian Conception of Nature is Almost Certainly False. So here's what he says. Thomas Nagel says, in our human existence here, we are conscious, we have some measure of free will, and we have a personhood, and none of those things can be accounted for by the natural processes. And so in his book here, that's what he's saying. He says that neo-Darwinism, just the whole materialist view of nature, can't possibly be true because there are things in existence that cannot be accounted for by nature. And I would say you cannot account for nature itself by natural means. Nature can't cause itself. Nothing can cause itself to come into existence. So if nature had a beginning, which we all agree it did, then it has to have begun supernaturally outside of nature. It can't create itself. I'll give you one more book and I'll be done here. The book is the author is Anthony Flew. His last, and he is passed on now. He was the number one atheist philosopher for many, many years. Brilliant British philosopher. His last book is called Why There Almost Must Certainly Be a God. What was his reasoning? What caused this vast difference in his thinking? Exactly what we were talking about earlier. Here's what he said. The chances of the information required in DNA molecules in life itself and how life reproduces via DNA molecules and so forth. He said the chances of the information being produced of that are nil. It's just almost the same as Dawkins is talking about, where Dawkins talks about monkeys on a typewriter. Well, that's what Flew said. If you took an infinite number of monkeys typing on an infinite number of typewriters, you would still never produce that kind of intelligence required for DNA to happen, for DNA to make life possible and life procreate. And so, but here are two real heavyweights, two philosophers really, Thomas Nagel and Anthony Flew, both of whom came to the realization that you can't account for life itself or the universe itself by 10 to the 40,000th power. I hope you can see that. Who designed the designer? No one. By definition, the designer is eternal, uncaused, undesigned. He's the designer for everything else. Thanks.